How's it going? This is Jim? No, that's not Jim. I'm Jim. This is Zoom Stryder. Stryder. Electric kick scooter from Zoom. It has a 500 watt hub motor with 16 newton meters of torque. It has a 33 volt 6.5 amp hour battery for 220 watt hours of juice. Scooter. I did performance tests including range, acceleration, braking, and also a headlight test. And I'm a scientist by nature, so I collected a gob of data, and then I'll talk about that in the conclusions. Just maybe give you an idea if this is a scooter for you or not. So I'll jump right into the buying experience. I bought this directly from Zoom. They're out of Singapore. Right on the website they say that it includes all taxes and fees. The only thing I noticed when I bought the scooter, I got a $15 charge from my credit card company that was a foreign transaction fee. So beware, that's possible. So I had it took me about a month to get the scooter. I had a bunch of back and forth with Zoom. Sometimes I was getting no response to emails. Other times I was getting a really canned response. Like I have multiple emails from Zoom that are exactly the same, to the tune of, you should get your tracking number in 72 hours. We expect you to get the scooter in 4 to 5 days. And that happened a number of times, and it put me off a bit, I'll be honest. Luckily I haven't had any issues with the scooter, but that could come into play if you have some issues, warranty type stuff down the road. So that's kind of the buying experience. And yeah, so I'm going to unfold the scooter. It's a pretty simple process. You push down on the rear fender. It has a little hook that unlocks in the fender, and there you go. Here's a manual also that comes in there. The manual sucks. Alright, so all you do to get the scooter up is, it's a little easier when it's not on board like this, but you press it until it clicks. And you'll see I have the accessory kickstand right here. I'm going to talk about the accessories here in a second. They're not fantastic. So some specs on this thing. The deck height's 4 inches above the ground with 2.5 inches of clearance. We have got 2 handlebar positions, nice spring-loaded handle grips, and another nice feature is the I guess you could call it a steering tube, is not perfectly round. It has a flat section on it, so it does kind of help the handlebar for not twisting, even if you don't have the handlebar clamped down all the way, or if you don't have it in one of the preset positions. So the first one is 3 feet 1 inches from the deck to the handlebar, and the second one is 3 feet 4 inches up there. The scooter itself is also 3 feet 4 inches long, and I weighed it at 24.2 pounds. So that's pretty close to what Zoom said, so I'm pretty happy with that. To fold the scooter back down, it's a lot easier to when you're standing on it, but you basically have to relieve pressure on the handlebar at the same time you push down on this little guy. So press forward, handlebar comes down. Whoopsie, I need to do that. And easy enough. It's kind of hard when you're doing this with the handlebars to flip it in one motion. Kind of have to do one at a time and clip it back in. There you go. It's pretty light. I did want to mention, and I'll go through some details about the control panel and stuff later, but there's a much better manual, and it's for the ETwow, poorly named scooter, and the booster scooter, and it talks about the different settings you can do in the control panel. You don't get that in anything that I see for Zoom, but it's the same control system. That being said, this scooter compares really well to the Uscooters booster, which is 36 volts. Same motor as far as I can tell, but a color display. And then the ETwow, E2, I guess it's E2, which you can still buy out there, is pretty much identical scooter. Sometimes you see it in a 36 volt. And now, right now, Zoom has basically the same scooter in a 36 volt configuration with a couple different battery options. It's more expensive. I still think this will give you a really good feel for what you can expect from the scooter. So now we're going to talk about the accessories for this. I don't know if you can see them on the video laid in front here, but You get a 3.5 amp charger, which is, you'll see in the unboxing also, but that's a pretty good performing charger. It recharges this thing really quickly. During my range test, I basically took this thing down to about 0 battery, and it was more than the 2 hours I say on the website, but it was definitely less than 3. I didn't time it exactly. And then one thing I was curious about when I got the scooter is if you had access to the charging port, which is right down here, why it's folded. And you can see here, I'll demonstrate it. There is plenty of space to get, oh geez, and see, you just saw the spark. So one of the things they said, Zoom said, between the Zoom Air 2 and this one was that they eliminated that. Well, obviously they did not eliminate that sparking. I typically plug the charger into the wall first, and for some reason that seems to eliminate the the spark. Step to the side. The other accessory it used to come with standard is this not so hot shoulder strap. And I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to have to fast forward the video because, you know, it takes a while. So that's the shoulder strap in all of its glory. It took me a while to figure out how it goes on here. It looks terrible. Like, I mean, this is a good looking scooter, and this shoulder strap just ruins the look. So when I was using it, I would put it tight like this when I was riding, and then you can, the maximum looseness here, it's kind of hard for me to do it in this particular, but I can barely get my arm in it, and it just doesn't. I found myself just holding it right here and carrying it. One thing I do typically to transport it, I either just grab it here and carry it, or I also grab it by the rear wheel, and you can just tilt it up and pull it. You know, sometimes you get a little black on your hand when it's not totally clean, but you know, that's an easy way to do it. And I'm gonna flip the scooter onto its side, and hopefully you can see this kickstand. It's got 2 holes. It's very simple. And my first thing I saw is like, well, wait a second, over here there are 2 holes. Well, you can see right off. I don't know if you can see that well in that camera angle. It's not even close. And plus this screw is into the suspension system, and you don't really want to take that off. So here, I'll demonstrate how I would like the kickstand to be and the problem it presents. So that would be great, because then you get a nice stable setup. But what that problem that presents is this. Now I can't set it down when it's folded on the ground. So the only way you can get this thing to cooperate is by try to get this angle to sort of match up with the angle at the bottom of this angle here, which the battery is right in here, by the way. So it's just there's a little bit of a lip on it that looks like it might catch there, but it doesn't really. And what happens is every so often you have to retighten this kickstand because it works itself back this direction. So it works itself from a kind of stable position. Ideally this would be like over here. And then it works itself to your scooter falling over. So that's not great. And you know, I think they could have done a much better job on their accessory. See, that's back enough that it works. You just have to pay attention to the potential movement. All right, that takes care of the kind of inside portion of this review. Jump outside to do give you a feel for what it's like to ride and the other overview type stuff I talked about. And let's do it. All right, as I said, inside, I'm gonna go through some of the other features of the scooter. So I'm just gonna kind of cruise around it real quick and show you some of the features. So already we talked about the rear latch here. One thing that's nice is it's probably a little bit hard to tell in this video, but the rear brake lights do light up brighter when they're depressed, both with the scuffing brake and with the finger brake. So this has got dual suspension. I'll flip it over in a second. So there's a coil spring suspension in here. nice grip tape. Of course, the charging port I talked about inside, and the little release latch. The not so fantastic kickstand. And I had a few times where I lost power, and these connectors, you know, they're not twist together connectors they're just push together. So that's, you know, I mean, it'd be nice if, I've only had it happen once, so, and I've ridden this thing close to 300 miles now. I'm going to turn the display on here so you can see that. It's a pretty simple display, 5-bar battery, 20% increments. I'll talk about battery life along with the range test. Little one there is a gear, so that's why I think it's a geared hub motor. This is the display temperature from everything I can tell, because I was doing temperature during my range test of the motor, and this does not tie in. Down here you got a headlight button, just one press and the headlight comes on. The mode basically takes it from trip to odometer, so I have 284 miles on the scooter. You hold it for about 4 or 5 seconds and then it resets. And then you got power button. Most of the controls, as I mentioned in that manual, or the setting changes, are you turn off the scooter, you hold down this and the power button at the same time, and then you depress the accelerator a certain number of times to basically get your setting. So I'm going to turn the headlight on, so it's a 6 LED light. There's another coil suspension in the front. Of course, they're both solid rubber tires. I couldn't really figure out what the travel is. I just did on a little ride test, bouncing on it so you can kind of see. So the underside is, you can see I got some scrapes on there. Just a single coil spring. Some of the other scooters you'll see are double. You can see some of the wire routes. There's some caulking on there. If you're doing a lot of riding in the rain, I'd probably put more caulking on. On the steering column adjustment, I've had some issues with this little shim. It pops out, but it's easy enough to push back down. Pull the scooter, obviously, if I'm hopping off the light rail, what have you. Come with a scooter like this, release the fender, I pop the handlebars at the same time, take it back, push it forward, and then release, set my handlebar. And I hold this little shim I just mentioned to down to make sure it stays in place. Either power the scooter off. At the same time, I drop the handlebar and relatch it. Use the handlebar to press forward at the same time you press down on the little toggle. It releases. I drop it down, lock it in place, then I pop the handlebars and boom. I realized there was one more thing I wanted to show, and was a kind of a idea of what the size of the deck really is. So I wear a size 10 shoe, and so I usually ride it with this sort of setup, like 1 foot like that, 1 foot like this. So you can kind of see, you know, the setup. You know, I've actually, on a longer ride, I'll adjust my feet position quite a bit more, and you can kind of go side to side, but the good lord, it's not that wide, so you can try that if you want. The one thing you would want to be careful with, and I read about it and I was kind of worried about it when I bought this scooter, is accidentally hitting this release for the deck while you're riding it. I've never really gotten that close, but this is really the only thing on the scooter that rattles. Everything else is solid. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a feel for the size of the deck. Thanks. take off from a stop so you can hear how the motor is working. This is in turbo mode, by the way. Hey, how's it going? We're back inside to talk about the results of the performance tests. This is what Zoom would like you to believe. 30-kilometer range, 30-kilometer-per-hour top speed. Obviously that's not the case, and that's why we're doing the tests. So let's dig in. Here we go with range test number 1. This test, I did not do a full range test. This was mostly to test the hot weather performance. It was between 98 and 100 degrees during this test. Wind speed was 2 to 5 miles per hour. And the final battery temperature at the end of the test was 124.2 degrees. So it was pretty hot. The battery got pretty hot. And I went 9.2 miles with 40% battery remaining as the indicator shows, which is not entirely accurate, but gives you a good idea for how this will do in the hot weather. Alright, here we're looking at range test number 2. I did this test with my special lady friend there on the bicycle. And this one, the temperature during the test was between 75 and 81 degrees. And I had 8 to 12 miles per hour of wind. It wasn't always in like a headwind, so it didn't affect the range terribly. Where I got almost 13.8 miles before the battery was dead. Like totally dead. I had to kick the last couple miles home at the end of this test. Now we are on to range test number 3. This one I did in turbo mode also, and it was between 84 and 88 degrees. Very little wind, only 2 miles per hour of wind. The motor temperature at the end of the test was 127 degrees, which was interesting because I was in a lower, I went further at a lower outside temperature, but the motor temperature was higher, leading me to believe that the motor temperature isn't necessarily related to exterior temperature, more how far you're riding. At an average of 19.6, average of 12.2 as you see there on the screen, top speed of 19.6, and I covered 11.8 miles. Just a note, all the speeds and distances on here are from a GPS calculation, not the display on the scooter. Here we got range test number 4. It is done in a time lapse, as you can see. I was experimenting with different camera methods, and this one was done in eco mode. Temperature outside was 72 to 77 degrees with wind of 5 to 6 miles per hour. The final motor temperature is 108.6, which leads me to believe that the eco mode does reduce the motor temperature. I covered 12.2 miles at an average of 13.9 miles per hour and a top speed of 18.9. And a note on the top speeds, that's because there are some downhills on these routes. This is my final range test. This is my son as the rider. This was between 87 and 93 degrees with 7 to 10 miles per hour of wind. Also done in turbo mode.
We're coming around slowly on your left. Or not. Alright.
The battery temperature, the motor temperature at the end of this test was 119.2 degrees. So not as much lower as I would expect for a lighter rider. So again, I think scooter use and speed is the biggest dictator of motor temperature. We got 17.8 miles covered at an average of 14.7 miles per hour. Alright, I hope you liked the range tests. Just want to quickly go through some takeaway messages from the range test for me. The first was my average range was about 12.6 miles, and that converts to a little over 20 kilometers. So of course that's quite a bit below what Zoom advertises, but I'm 40 pounds heavier than what they base their range on. That being said, my 100-pound riding son got close, not quite to what Zoom advertises, so take that as you will. It's pretty common for manufacturers to be pretty optimistic on these sort of things. The other takeaway is that eco mode doesn't increase the range, so it's kind of a misnomer. It should just be called like not as fun mode. And then also it takes away your ability to have cruise control. So my recommendation on riding the scooter is always keep it in turbo mode, and I will turn 0 to start off and on. And you can also turn cruise control off and on, which there are some times it engages pretty quickly and it can turn on when if you're not right on top of it, you might not be expecting it. So you can also turn cruise control off and on. I would always keep it in turbo mode though. All right, now we're gonna move on to some other tests. All right, now we're diving into some braking tests. I did multiple braking tests with thumb throttle only, thumb throttle and the rear brake, with myself as 175 pounds and then my son as 100 pounds. And you'll see the averages pop up on the videos, and I'll do a quick discussion of the results afterwards. The first braking test will be my son at a 100-pound rider, and I'll put the totals up here on the screen in just a second. Alright, so here's me, a 175-pound rider. And you can see that the difference between the electronic brake only and electronic versus scuffer brake together is a pretty large distance. For me, it was over 20 feet, and my son was about the same. Alright, hopefully you enjoyed the braking test. Couldn't show you a lot, but you can see kind of the process I did, and for both me and my son, we made sure we had plenty of distance to get up to top speed. So for me that was 17 miles per hour or so, and for my son about 18. So we're hitting our starting to brake point at that. The one thing you'll notice from the results is the scooter doesn't stop all that fast. I mean, at the top speed with thumb throttle only, took almost 71 feet to stop, and so that can present some issues if you're trying to stop in emergency situations, of course. And the one thing I couldn't recreate for this video is there's some times when you're braking with a thumb throttle, it seems like if you let off and then reapply, you lose braking power. It's a strange feeling, and it was hard to really recreate. So you just have to be aware that if you purchase this scooter, the braking isn't going to be its strong suit. We're going to go through multiple acceleration tests, 4 actually, in each different configuration, with 175-pound rider, myself and my son, 100-pound rider, in turbo mode and eco mode. So let's check them out. On the acceleration test, I'm going to let the video kind of speak for itself. The thing you'll want to take note of is how much different you'll notice the acceleration on the ground is with turbo mode and eco mode. And if you see there in the video, you'll see the thumb occasionally coming off. That's because it's in turbo mode with the cruise control engaged. Here we go in eco mode, and you'll see more so with me riding than the second rider here coming up. You'll just notice the difference in the off-the-line acceleration. So the results of the acceleration tests. The scooter has a lot of zip. I mean, I don't have, like I talked about before, I haven't compared a lot of other scooters in these tests, but it feels like it has strong acceleration. So I got an average of, a little over 12 miles per hour in turbo mode, and my son got a little over 13.5, 200 feet. The difference between the zero start being off and on was less than half a mile per hour. And that's a really hard value to kind of the pushing off factor to put in. So those 12, a little over 12 and a little over 13.5, that's based on zero start, which is a little more controllable. And then also in eco mode, there was about a 3 mile per hour drop off, as you probably saw, and you can even see in the video. It just looks sluggish, and it brings me back to one of the weak points of the scooter is eco mode. This acceleration just takes so much away, and it doesn't. You lose acceleration, you don't gain range, and you lose control, cruise control. So it's just not. That's my biggest complaint on the scooter. So we're going to do a headlight test, and we'll do a little summary wrap up. Alright, we're doing a lighting test of the Zoom Stryder. This is at 10 feet from my garage. You can kind of see the beam pattern. That is a beam pattern at 20 feet. And I'm going to move back. So this is a beam pattern on my garage at 30 feet with the Zoom Stryder. This is going to be a headlight test. I guess we're going to see some fireworks too for the Zoom Stryder. So in this test, the camera is positioned on the dashboard of my car, as you see me going off there in the distance. And as I come back and approach, you'll be able to see what you would see if you were encountering the scooter. And I think it was a good representation. So I hope this review is useful. All these tests, I hope they help you make a decision or aid your decision. I know the performance test will mean more when I get some more reviews done. So but I set it up as a nice way to have a comparison later down the road with a set distance. If you have comments, please let me know. This is my first video on YouTube, so hopefully it's not terrible. And keep riding and keep having fun. Talk to you later. I have to change that last part.